Dear Lord, we ask your blessings that VBTA may continue to be the light that shines in the darkness of local government actions and political exploits for the citizens of Virginia Beach. We ask your guidance that we may persevere in the quest to bring responsible and ethical government to our city. Please give us the endurance to continue this apparent never-ending battle with members of City Council controlled by special interests on behalf of the beach citizens. We ask that you be with members of our armed forces who serve in harm's way throughout the world, guiding and protecting them as they defend our liberties. For those who have made the ultimate sacrifice that we may freely assemble here today, we ask that you bring comfort and solace to their grieving loved ones. We ask your blessings for the veterans who have served to keep our country free. Lord, please comfort the families of John Taylor, a great defender of Virginia citizens' rights and personal sovereignty, and Senator John Miller, a leader in Virginia educational reform and bipartisan legislation. These men will long be remembered and greatly missed for their contributions of well-being to the citizens of Virginia Beach. And we ask all this in your name, Lord.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a seat. I'm delighted today that we have our guest speaker, Congressman Randy Forbes.
That's that football player. That's good company, Randy.
My speech is not slurred because we have a secret stash in the back. My braces just had another adjustment, so I'm even worse than I was previously, so forgive me. I'm sure that's what it was. Congressman Forbes served in the Virginia House of Delegates from 1989 to 97, and Virginia Senate from 97 to 2001. Randy was first elected to the House in 2001 and was the chair of the Republican Party of Virginia from 1996 to 2001. Since being elected to Congress in 2001, Congressman Forbes' top priorities have been protecting national security, defending our defenders, and serving those who serve this nation. As one of the most senior members of the Armed Forces Services Committee and as chairman of Sea Power and Projection Forces Subcommittee, Congressman Forbes has fought tirelessly to support our troops at every stage of their service. As a result of his work on behalf of our military, he is one of only a few individuals to have been honored with the highest civilian award offered by both the United States Army and the Navy. While Randy's legislative proposals have received significant national attention, bringing jobs and economic development to Virginia has been a hallmark of his service in Congress, and as chairman of the Congressional Modeling and Simulation Caucus, he has worked to make Hampton Roads a destination for high-paying technology jobs. He's also been champion of Virginia manufacturers, working to create a national manufacturing strategy. As a founder of the Congressional Panama Canal Expansion Caucus, he is working to position the Port of Virginia for continued economic growth, as well as Virginia's vital shipping and warehousing industries, which contribute so much to this region. In recognition for his work to support small businesses and create jobs, he has been awarded the Guardian of Small Business Award from NFIB, as well as the Chamber of Commerce's Spirit of Enterprise Award. A lifelong resident of Virginia, Randy graduated from Great Bridge High School in Chesapeake, was valedictorian of his 1974 class of Randolph-Macon. As a graduate of UVA School of Law, he attends Great Bridge Baptist Church, where he continues to teach adult Sunday school, which he's done for the past 20 years. He and his wife Shirley have been married since 1978, have 4 adult children, and Neil, Jamie, Jordan, and Justin, and 3 grandchildren, and he was gracious enough to let me take a picture of him with Flat Stanley via Merlina. For those of you that have children and grandchildren know that the children read a book, and then they send that character around, and you're to take pictures of it. So the family in Ohio is quite excited to have a picture with Congressman Ford. You have 3x5 cards on your table. As he does his presentation, or if you already had questions to be addressed, please write those on the card and pass them to, I'll be sitting at this table. You can give them to any of our board members, and we'll get them to myself. So please join me in welcoming Congressman Randy Forbes.
Well, thank y'all so much for, one, what you do, but thank you for letting me be here. And I sincerely mean that, because so oftentimes we don't get an opportunity like this, for me to listen to you, for you to fire at me whatever questions you want to fire at me, but for me just to be able to kind of talk and explain a little bit about what I see going on with the country and why I think this race is important. Oftentimes what we have today, we don't get real debates anymore. We don't really get real discussions anymore. What we get is presentations and forums. So when I go someplace, somebody says, well, you got 5 minutes to just talk about this issue. And you know, in 5 minutes, you can't possibly peel back that onion. We don't even get debates in Congress anymore. What you have is presentations or forums. You don't get to just jump up on the floor anytime you want and make a speech or talk. And you know, when I was in the state legislature, at least we got to debate issues. You don't do that. So somebody's allocated 2 or 3 minutes, they get to speak. Most time it's 2 minutes. You get in 2 minutes, you can't really talk about an issue very much, and nobody can really ask you questions. So I'm going to try to lay out a few observations in the time I have, but then whatever you want to fire at me, feel free to do it. Nothing's off the table. Have at me. Let me start with what all of you know. When I go around anywhere today, it's not what I see in Washington, but it's just when I talk to people at the Home Depot or Lowe's or my Sunday school class or wherever, their basic fear is that they feel somehow the other the country's just slipping through their fingers, and they kind of feel the world is too. You know, they can make fun of us as we get each year older, but the reality is that what we used to call good, they call bad today. And what they used to call bad, they call good today. And so a lot of Americans are really concerned because they feel like nobody's listening to them. And when nobody's listening to you, what happens is you try to get louder. And then sometimes when nobody listens to you, you try to get more shrill. And then when you know nobody still listens to you, you actually get uncivil. And unfortunately, that's what we're having across the country today, which is one of the reasons it's very difficult for us to, like I said, peel back that onion and find out what's going on. Let me give you just this picture. Sometimes you get it from life's examples better than you can making something up. My wife Shirley and I have been married 37 years, 38 years come June if she sticks with me a few more weeks or a few more months. But the other day we were on the boardwalk, and we were walking down, and she reached over and grabbed my hand. I know that sounds kind of corny, but we still love each other. I mean, we're not one of those dysfunctional families, you know, and talk about. And what really got me, though, was I immediately had this flashback to where we were young and we were dating on the boardwalk and walking down the boardwalk. But quickly I remembered a situation we had a few years ago, and here was the situation. I was at the top of the beach with Shirley, and down close to the shoreline, there were 2 little boys. They were probably 5 years old. I'm just not good at ages, but they were little boys. And they were building a sandcastle. They were fighting the whole time. And one of them had a little red shovel, and he would throw sand on the other one, and the other one would hit him, and they were arguing where they would dump their sand. And you've seen that happen before. Well, I got fixated on this thing. I know you think he doesn't have a life, you know, but for some reason they just captivated me, and I watched them for over an hour until all of a sudden they hadn't realized the tide had been coming in. And what happened was I looked between their little heads, and a wave came in that was bigger than all the other waves that day. And when it came in, they were on their knees. They were little, but the wave came in almost up to their shoulders. And when it went back out, it washed away everything they had been working on for that hour and a half. And I looked at Shirley and I said, this is what happens to us in America. We fight so much over the sandcastles that we miss these waves that are just coming across our shores that can take away everything we believe in and everything we stand for. And what I find as I've fought these battles all my life is that there are really 2 kind of groups of people. And I don't like to stereotype people, but it's kind of 2 groups. There's one of them that feels like, look, I've got all these waves, I don't know what to do about it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand up on Congress and I'm going to give some speech, and then I'm going to tweet it out, and I'm going to put it on the internet, and I'm going to give everybody a press release that I stood up for this thing on the floor. And then there's another group that's like my mother, and I love her to death. She's 91, going on 92. I've shared this with some of you. She has early stages of Alzheimer's, and it's a tough thing to do. But she still remembers most things. She just brings in some things that aren't there. But about a year and a half ago, I had to take her to the internist because I knew she wasn't putting all the pieces together like I wanted her to. And he did all the same questions that you always hear him ask. Her name is Thelma. I have to tell everybody she's 5'2". She doesn't even make 5 foot, you know, and she's less than 100 pounds now. But she's in his office, sitting at a little table, a little chair like this, and he says this. He says, Thelma, he said, what month is it? And she told him. And then he said, what year is it? She told him. She said, what day of the week is it? She told him. She said, who are your children? She told him. And then he looks at her and he said, Thelma, who's the President of the United States? Nothing. She just stares at him. Little teeny 100-pound, 5-foot woman just stares at him. And he looks at me and then he looks at her and says, Thelma, who is the President of the United States? Nothing. And then a third time he looks at her and says, Thelma, who's the President of the United States? And then he looks at me like he's really worried. And she leans over in her chair and she says this. She said, we never, ever say that name in our house. And he looks at me and said, well, she's still pretty sharp. You know, there's the one group in Congress that just feel like if I just get up and give a speech about it and send it out on the internet and tell everybody that's what I'm doing, that's enough. And then there's the group like my mother just says, if I don't mention it, if I don't say it, it's going to go away. I want to just tell you what I base my life on is fighting for the principles that I believe in. Not just yesterday, but all my life. And I have felt during that time there are 3 things we have to do. We've got to have the right vision of where we need to go. We've got to have the right commitment to that vision. But you have to persist until we can get in positions where we can actually implement that vision. And I see people today who sometimes can be very passionate about something, but they don't have the commitment to stay in there and do it because some of you have been in this fight for a long, long period of time. You know you're going to be in it for a long, long period of time because it's not just going to go away tomorrow. And so if I took you all the way back, and the only reason I do this is because I think the best predictor of tomorrow, of what a man's going to do, is what they did today and what they did yesterday. I go back to when I was in high school, and there were protests, there were all the kinds of things going. I actually led my school. I was the president of the school, and we actually raised money, not taxpayer money, student money. We worked to build a school in a Peace Corps country, not with taxpayer money, but with our money. And when I got to college, the first thing that, well, not first thing I did, but I did a thesis on the Arab-Israeli conflict, and I became passionate about the fact that our #1 ally in the Middle East was Israel, and that we needed to make sure we were defending Israel and working with Israel and what we had to do. And I became committed to work through that and done that all my life since then. When I got to the House of Delegates, as you mentioned in there, one of the things that I realized was these concepts of freedom we talk about and liberty, they're sometimes just kind of nebulous, but at the cornerstone of freedom, it's my ability to shape my future. And if you take away my ability to shape my future, then I don't have any freedom. So my commitment from law school was this: small and medium-sized businesses, because I realized they were the job creators in the country, and if we lost small and medium-sized businesses, we lost the ability to shape our future. And so I realized there were 3 things that were killing them, and it still kills them today. Taxes that they were having to pay. But not just taxes, the regulations that they have, which is a type of tax that's put on, but also litigation costs. Those 3 things were strangling and killing our small businesses, and I began to fight for them. When I got to the House of Delegates, I realized that if we could go out in our neighborhoods, how could we shape our future and what we were doing? And we were letting people go through the prisons. We were giving them these huge jail times, but we were letting them back out on parole. I wrote a big part and fought and led the bill in the House of Delegates that reformed criminal law and abolished parole and did truth and justice in sentencing in the House. As you mentioned, I became state party chairman because I realized if we weren't in a position to change these things, all we were doing was giving speeches. And when I became chairman, we were fighting all over the state, torn apart. Let me tell you what we did in that 5 years. We took over control of the House for the first time, control of the Senate. First time we'd ever won 3 statewide offices. We won both U.S. Senate seats and picked up seats in the House, and we won 15 out of 16 special elections. But then I went to Congress, and let me just tell you a couple things that are there, and then I want to get to your questions. Freedom comes in different faces to different people. Sometimes we love to wave a flag and say, oh my gosh, freedom is taken to shore at Normandy. My dad was at Normandy, and I'm proud of that. But let me tell you what I realized, too. Later in his life, he got Parkinson's disease. And I realized that that Parkinson's disease could rob him of his ability to shape his future every bit as much as some enemy could have done that to him had they won that battle at Normandy. And I began to realize how important it was that we do the right kind of medical research so that we can impact people's lives there, not with taxpayer funds, but making sure we weren't wasting those dollars because of political research, but it was nearing in on how we could change people's lives. And let me tell you what else I realized. I got the privilege of being like the second group of Americans that ever got to go into the 2nd Artillery in China. That's their missile system. Don Rumsfeld was first. I was second. And all of a sudden I realized, if we get national security wrong, none of the rest of this stuff matters at all. And so I became committed, and I've been fighting for the entire time I've been in Congress, to not just have the right vision for where our military goes, but to make sure that we had the commitment to it and that we were in a position to do something about it. I don't have the time, unless you ask the questions, to tell you what's happening across the globe, but I'll give you these two pictures. Because of where we've gone, and all of this didn't happen under Obama. A lot of it happened under Obama. Some of it actually began under President Bush. But what is happening is the curve lines for our enemies, the bad guys around the world, are going up geometrically, and our curve lines are going down. And we've got to change those curve lines. Right now, I have, because of the work we've done, because of the positions we're in, I get to chair the subcommittee that oversees the major programs for the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force. I don't have to just give a speech anymore. I don't have to not say anything about it. We can move these lines, and we're starting to move them to change where we are in terms of these curve lines. Now, I'm not a big one on endorsements just to say Curtis Byrd likes me, and that's important. But it does mean something when we have 7 former secretaries of the Navy who are willing to come down, including John Lehman, who was the architect of the Navy under Ronald Reagan, John Warner, who will come down and say, this could be the most important race in the country for the future of the United States military and for the Navy, because not only does he have the right vision, not only does he have the commitment, but he's in the position to actually get us the things we need to get to turn those curve lines over. And I'm committed to doing that. Last 2 things I want to share with you is this. When I look at most people, and I look in their eyes and I ask them, what's the most important thing to shape in your future? Oftentimes those are really good jobs. I had a guy in my Sunday school class who got hit in 1 week with 2 horrible things. His doctor told him he had terminal cancer, and he got fired from the job that he'd had for almost 30 years. I don't know what you say to somebody like that. All I can do sometimes is put my arm around him, and I put my arm around him, and I said, Myron, I said, Shirley and I are going to be thinking about you, and we're going to be praying for you. That's what most people would say. He looked at me, and he said, and I was kind of shocked, but he said, Randy, if you can only pray for one thing, don't pray for the cancer, pray for my job. He said, I'll fight the cancer. He said, but if I lose my job, I can't take care of my family. I can't shape my future. And whether he was right or wrong in his priorities, it hit me as how important his job was. In our area, right now, we have 45% of our economy and 36% of our jobs is directly supported by Department of Defense spending. That's a big deal. If we lose that, it impacts the job opportunities for so many people in our region. That's why historically, every state legislature has had 4 members of the legislature from Hampton Roads or touching Hampton Roads. When they did this new redistricting, they brought a professor in from California, Berkeley, who knew nothing about Virginia. And he took the 1st district and moved it up north So that no longer touches Hampton Roads. He took Williamsburg, Post, and York out of it. He took my old district before it, and he took the two anchor cities, Chesapeake and Suffolk, and he